I want to take this moment just to briefly thank the organizers for the invitation. And I want to start with a question. The spoiler alert is that the answer's in the title of the talk, so don't read that. Let's just start anyways and proceed. What's the biological system that contributes to nearly every human disease, whether it's cancer, seasonal allergies, arthritis, Alzheimer's? It is also the system that you can't do without. You just can't live without it. And the answer, of course, is your immune system. Now, I had a pleasant surprise recently when binging a marathon of The Magic School Bus with my 2-year-old daughter to revisit actually one of the clearest, simplest examples that I remember from my youth of explaining how the immune system works. And so the episode is Inside Ralphie, season 1, episode 3. And Ralphie is a student in Miss Frizzle's class. He is sick. He's got a bacterial infection and a fever. And they deem it a good idea to shove everybody into a shrinking bus and shove their way into Ralphie's body. What they see is the immune system in action. Bacteria being destroyed by immune cells, antibodies aggregating on top of those bacteria and taking them away. But then quickly, the immune system also obviously recognizes a bus probably shouldn't be in your bloodstream. And so they are pursued relentlessly through the body. It's not quite as negative as I'm putting it right now in the show, but they are pursued relentlessly. And they finally have to exit through Ralphie's nose to safety. And that's perfect, because that's the immune system at work. It's doing everything that we should expect it to do. It's getting rid of a small microscopic bus in our bodies. And how does it do that? Well, it actually has a number of cells that race through a highway system of blood vessels and lymphatic vessels that are elegantly diagrammed by someone far more artistic than me in these diagrams here. You can see that immune cells are designed so that their form and function match. They have no centralized organ like the heart of the brain. They instead have lymph nodes, your spleen, your thymus, your bone marrow. It's everywhere, from cells getting into your brain to the centers of your bones, all the way out to the skin of your toes. The immune system and its cells are patrolling everywhere to try and keep us safe. Now, as I mentioned, it's kind of like an army. There are a lot of different players. For those of you that are video game players or card game players, you kind of think of them as roles within a card game or a video game. You have your innate immune system, the fast actors. So these are the guys that are the first responders to the scene. How fast? Take, for example, the neutrophil. In response to a bug bite or a cut, you can get thousands, millions of neutrophils in minutes to that site. And it's blasting the site with sterilizing proteins and trying to surround it and cordon it off. But it's not just all fast action. It's also a little bit slower. Dendritic cells, for example, in the middle, lower middle. Those are the cells that are responsible for recognizing foreign things, perhaps a bus, other things, patterns, shapes, sugars that maybe don't belong in your body but are necessary for bacteria, other foreign proteins. And dendritic cells take information from the innate immune system and pass it to your adaptive immune system. Now these guys, you might think they're a little bit slow, because they are. They take days as opposed to minutes to respond. But these are the really heavy hitters that give you exquisite specificity and a lifetime, potentially, of protection. Decades-long lifetimes of specific cells. You have cells like B cells that produce proteins called antibodies. These can block or kill other viruses, microbes, things that don't belong in your body. CD8 T cells, for example, the green card. These guys can hunt down and kill virus-infected cells, cancerous cells. So these are really the heavy hitters. If everything's working according to plan, your immune response should look something similar to this cartoon. And so what you see on the left is a first exposure, say to a rhinovirus, a cold. And you see that there is a peak, which represents the intensity of the immune response, the number of cells that are produced, the number of proteins that are produced. You see that that occurs about the first week after your infection. So when you have a fever, This is what's happening inside your body. Cells are multiplying, proteins are being made, and your body, your immune system, is trying to fight off that first infection. It takes a little while for it to calm down after that, say on the order of weeks. But then, let's say you come across a friend who still hasn't had that infection quite yet, and shakes your hand and happens to have that infection. You are now somewhat protected. And so you have another immune response. It's shorter in duration, maybe a little less in magnitude, but that provides protective immunity. And then if things are really working well, you get a memory response that lasts you years, months to years. And that means that when you encounter the same thing a third time, your immune system is not going to let anything through. That intensity goes through the roof. The speed and quickness is very, very short and efficient. And therein lies the first lesson that I'd like to talk about today from the immune system. When the immune system is working well, it fuels medical advances like the vaccine. And so the first lesson is that since potentially the early 200s BC in Asia, medical practitioners have recognized that if a person is infected with something and survives, they are therefore less likely to experience that same infection again. Now, for concrete documented evidence of this, you have to go a little bit more proximal to us, 1500s in China, as depicted in this painting. So this is one of the earliest recorded documentations of a preparation of a vaccine. A medical practitioner is taking material from infectious sores from one person, prepping it onto a needle, and then preparing to put it into another person. Obviously, we've come a little bit further than that with our vaccines now, and a lot of that is probably things that you've learned about or remember about Edward Jenner and others in the English countryside who observed that farmers who have cows with cowpox are less likely to suffer from smallpox. And that's the origin of vaccines. It cannot be overstated how important vaccines are to maintaining our current societal health, and also how impactful they were in changing the landscape of public health and modern medicine, one of the top 10 achievements of modern medicine. This graph shows a number of infectious diseases for which we now have vaccines. The bars represent how many cases per year in the US in the pre-vaccine era. So you see the long bar at the bottom, varicella zoster virus, otherwise known as chickenpox or shingles, about 4 million people per year in the US before the vaccine. And then you can go all the way up to paralytic polio and acute polio, like FDR suffered from, which is in the tens of thousands. This is the picture after vaccines. 2006, reported cases of each virus, greater than 99% reductions across the board. Varicella, chickenpox, 4 million to 48,000. Others, totally eradicated. Polio, acute or paralytic, 0. Diphtheria, 0. Smallpox, 0. It cannot be overstated how important vaccines are and how impactful they've been. So that's when things go well. The flip side of that lesson is kind of the fuel for the title of my talk, A Friend and an Enemy. The same responses that protect us in vaccines. Antibodies, as I mentioned before. They block microbes, right? They trigger protective immune responses. In the ultimate betrayal, autoimmune diseases can be generated. The immune system, in a disease such as lupus, can actually generate antibodies against our own DNA released from dying cells. And those go on to damage organs. In lupus, over 1 million Americans are affected a year, and lupus is a lifelong, incurable disorder right now, and it damages every organ system, from the brains to the lungs to the kidneys to your skin. And so our lab has recently been thinking about how can we leverage our understanding of the immune system and engineer a better solution? Can we get to a cure or a more effective therapy? And so first we go back to the immune mechanism and think about how is lupus causing a disease? These complexes of antibodies and DNA clump onto cells, and those cells then cause organ damage in lupus. Current therapies, they're nonspecific suppressors of all immune cells. Like I said, you can't live without your immune cells. So obviously there are some pretty bad side effects with current medications. It's nonspecific. You're not targeting just the damaging cells, you're targeting every cell. So can we make this more specific? Can we also make it more robust? Can we not just stop the active cells, but can we stop the triggers of those active cells, those antibodies, those DNA pieces? The answer is yes, we can. There are proteins, enzymes, called proteases, which can cleave or cut antibodies apart, and nucleases, which can cleave DNA pieces apart. Unfortunately, we're still in the realm of not specific. We can introduce these into the body, but they might cut helpful antibodies as well. And so we've got to think back a little further and also think about including existing drugs. How do we make existing drugs and new drugs more specific, better? This is where I'll refer back to a few minutes ago when I was talking about the innate immune system, dendritic cells, other cells that are similar. Recognize shapes, patterns. For example, Ebola is quite unique in structure. This is an electron micrograph from the CDC, the first image ever of the Ebola virus. And so this is on a microscopic scale, a worm, a very unusual shape. Nothing else in your body quite looks like that. If we make wormy nanoparticles out of pieces of plastic polymers in the lab, this is an electron microscope picture of what these look like, created by graduate student Marilyn Allen in the lab. These nanoparticles actually preferentially accumulate in the organs damaged by lupus, and they also just happen to preferentially accumulate on the cells that damage organs in lupus. Great luck. But we learned a little bit of bio-inspired design from thinking about that recognition of shape, differential shapes. And so this is very much a work in progress, and science is a team effort. And so the work in progress is a vision. It's an engineered platform that's all in one to treat lupus. So we create our wormy nanoparticles. We put the drugs that currently cause lots of toxic side effects inside. And so they're only released nearby the damaging immune cells. And then when those nanoparticles accumulate in the damaged organs, they can clear out all of those nasty antibodies and DNA pieces that are causing the damage in lupus. And so just by pure shape, we can target and select where and when drugs are acting. And so this is a team effort led by graduate student Marilyn Allen, also worked on by undergraduates in the lab, James Dizon and Alex Sayas, and helped by a collaborator, a good friend, Dr. Evan Scott from Northwestern, and supported generously by funding agencies like the Lupus Foundation of America and the TEDCO, Maryland Innovation Initiative. And so I've told you today about 2 lessons, and I want you to take a few take-homes. The first one being get vaccinated, every vaccine that you can get, especially the flu vaccine and now HPV vaccine. Best chance to fight against those diseases. But the intellectual take-home is the immune system is in a careful balance at all times. And there are people like our lab and many others working to help in different disease situations to push that system back into balance and trying to better understand how to keep the balance so we can all live longer, healthier, safer lives. Thank you.